I watched my sister get shunned for a phone. I said nothing. The phone was not even hers. That is the part that still sits in me like a splinter I cannot reach, small and specific and impossible to stop noticing. It was not her phone. She had borrowed it from an English girl she worked alongside at the vegetable stand, borrowed it for 20 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon to call our cousin who had moved to a community 4 hours away and whom she had not spoken to in 8 months. 20 minutes. One call. A borrowed phone she did not keep. And by the following Sunday the bishop knew, and by the Sunday after that, my sister was standing in front of the congregation, listening to the community formally withdraw from her, and I was sitting 4 rows behind her on a hard wooden bench watching it happen, and I did not say a word. I was 22, she was 19, and the silence I kept that morning is one I have been trying to understand ever since, what it was made of, why it held, what it cost both of us that I could not break it. My name is Miriam, and this is Miriam the Amish, the channel where I finally say the things my community would never allow me to say out loud. I grew up Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I left a few years ago. If you want to hear the truth about Amish life from someone who actually lived it, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. There is still so much I have not told you. Now let me explain something about technology and what it means inside an Old Order Amish community, because the outside world consistently misunderstands this, and the misunderstanding matters for what happened to my sister. The Ordnung's restrictions on technology are not arbitrary. They are not about the technology itself in some simple sense. A telephone is not forbidden because the telephone is evil. It is restricted because of what the telephone does to the structure of a community. A telephone connects you to people outside the district. It gives you access to voices and information and relationships that exist beyond the edges of the community's visibility. It makes you reachable by the English world, and it makes the English world reachable by you. And the primary threat the Ordnung is designed against is exactly that kind of permeability. The community survives by remaining distinct, by not being conformed to the world, by keeping its boundaries clear and its members legible to each other. A device that makes you reachable from outside those boundaries is not a convenience. It is a crack in the wall. What this means in practice is that the phone rules are among the most carefully maintained in the Ordnung. Many Old Order districts allow a shared phone in a phone shanty at the edge of the property. A community phone, accessible but not private, not personal, not in the pocket. Personal phones, phones owned by individuals, phones carried and used privately, those are a different category entirely. They represent not just the use of a technology, but the claiming of a private channel to the outside world that the community cannot monitor or manage. And an unmonitored channel in a community built on total visibility is not a small thing. My sister had not owned a phone. She had borrowed one, but the distinction did not matter because the act of using it, privately, without disclosure, to contact someone outside the district through an English person's device was exactly the kind of permeability the community was designed to prevent. The phone was not the point. The contact was the point. The fact of a young woman reaching past the edges of the community's visibility without asking was the point. I knew this. I had known it my entire life. And I also knew my sister, and I knew how much she had missed our cousin, and I knew the 8 months of that missing because she had told me, and I was the only person she had told. So when the bishop began the proceedings that Sunday, I was not only a witness to my sister's shunning, I was the person who knew the fullest version of the story. I was the person who understood that what she had done was reach towards someone she loved through the only available means, and that the reaching had been ordinary human longing and nothing more. I said nothing. I want to be exact about why. and I want you to stay with me through the exactness, because I think it is the most important part of this story. Please subscribe to Miriam the Amish, like this video, and turn on the notification bell, because what I understand now about the silence I kept that Sunday is something I could not have understood while I was still inside that life. And I think it is one of the most honest things I have yet to say on this channel. I did not stay silent because I agreed with what was happening. I did not stay silent because I thought my sister had done something wrong. I stayed silent because I was afraid. And the fear was not simple. It was not the fear of being shunned myself, though that was present underneath everything, like a bass note you feel more than hear. It was something more layered and more shameful than that. I was afraid of what speaking would reveal. Not about my sister, about me. Because if I stood up on that bench and said that I knew why she had borrowed the phone, and that the reason was human and ordinary, and that the punishment was disproportionate to the act, I would not only be defending my sister, I would be revealing that I had known and had said nothing before that Sunday. I would be revealing that I had kept her secret, which meant I had been complicit in her act of reaching, which meant I had a version of the same thing inside me that had gotten her placed in the ban. And I was not ready to have that named. I was not ready to be seen the way she was being seen. So I sat on the bench, and I folded my hands, and I let the silence hold. She did not look back at me during the proceedings. I have thought about that many times. She knew I was there. She knew I knew the story, and she did not look back. I do not know whether that was grace or resignation, or whether she had already understood, before that Sunday, that the silence of the people who love you is one of the things a community like ours runs on, that it is not a failure of love exactly, that it is what love looks like when love is afraid of itself. The shunning lasted 14 months. During those months, I saw my sister at family gatherings where the rules of the ban were applied in the particular careful way they are applied when the shunned person is still living nearby, still someone you pass in a yard, still someone whose face you know as well as your own. I could not eat at the same table as her. I could not accept anything from her hand. I could speak to her. The ban does not forbid speech between family members in the way it forbids it between church members in formal settings, but every conversation happened inside the awareness of what the ban was doing around us, which made the conversations feel like trying to speak normally inside a room with very low ceilings. I brought her things sometimes through the indirect routes the community allows for such things. A jar of the jam she liked, a piece of fabric for a dress she was making, always through another person's hands, always with the careful indirection that let both of us pretend the gift was something other than what it was, which was me trying to reach her through the same crack in the wall she had been punished for finding. An older woman in our district, someone who had watched several shunnings over her long decades inside the community, said something to me one afternoon that I was not expecting and that I have never forgotten. She did not say it to comfort me. She said it the way old Amish women say things, plainly, without softening, because they have lived long enough to believe that plainness is kinder than the alternative. She said, "The people who say nothing during a shunning are the ones who carry it the longest. The one being shunned has her punishment named and declared and eventually lifted. The ones who sat silent have to live with their silence without any of it ever being acknowledged." She said, "The community needs the silence of the witnesses as much as it needs the shunning itself. The silence is how it knows everyone else understands the rules." I have thought about that so many times. The way my silence that Sunday was not passive. It was a contribution. It was the community collecting something from me, a piece of my willingness to protect myself at my sister's expense, and using it as proof that the structure held, that even the people who loved the person being shunned understood that the structure was more important than the person. In therapy, I found language for what I had given that Sunday, without understanding I was giving it. My therapist called it coerced complicity, the way closed systems implicate their members in acts of control against each other, so that the members become participants in the system's enforcement rather than merely its subjects. She said it is one of the most effective mechanisms of community control ever developed because it distributes the cost and the guilt among everyone rather than concentrating it in the leadership. The bishop does not bear the weight of the shunning alone. Every person on every bench who knew the shunned member and said nothing bears it with him. And because they bear it together, it becomes something they cannot easily turn against the system, because turning against the system would mean turning against themselves. My sister's shunning was lifted 14 months after it was declared. She returned to full standing in the community. She married 2 years later. She is still inside the community. I have not spoken to her since I left, not because I do not want to, but because the shunning that now applies to me means that our contact would cost her something she has already paid too much to lose. I write her letters sometimes that I do not send. I tell her the things I would say if the rules allowed saying them. I tell her I am sorry for the Sunday I sat on the bench with my hands folded and let the silence hold. I tell her I know now what my silence cost her, and I tell her I know it cost me something too, a piece of myself I have spent years trying to find my way back to. If you have ever stayed silent when someone you loved needed your voice, not because you did not love them, but because you were afraid of what speaking would reveal about you, I see you. If you have ever sat in a room where something wrong was happening and kept your hands folded and let the silence hold, because the cost of breaking it felt greater than the cost of keeping it, I see you. If you have been complicit in something you did not agree with, because the system you were inside made complicity the price of belonging, you were not a coward. You were a person inside a structure that had been designed for exactly that moment, that had been designed to make your silence feel like the only available choice. It was not the only choice. But understanding that from inside the structure is one of the hardest things a human being can do, and the fact that you are here, listening, trying to understand what happened and what it cost, is not nothing. It is the beginning of giving your silence back to yourself, where it belongs. If this story reached something in you, please subscribe to Miriam the Amish, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. There is still so much I have not said. Until next time, choose your freedoms wisely. They might just save your life.